Hi, everybody, and wow, it's welcome to episode 32, Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group, CIC. That's Community Interest Company people. Just thought you need to know that. We had a great week, and we'll go into that in a minute, because obviously I know you're busy. But first of all, let's get Gary. Yeah, Gary's still here, saying, can you give a very brief rundown of your experience, Gary?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, my experience is 37 years and rising in the security industry. We've done everything from basic security work right the way up to close protection work, hostile, and events.
Hey, Gary, is cybersecurity your bag?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Ian. Funny enough, it really isn't. But guess what, Ian? I
Yeah,
decided to step into the realm of cybersecurity, and I'm having a look at it.
good lad, good lad. Well done. I, of course, am what's known as a generalist, a security consultant, I think, is one of the things that I'm termed as, amongst many other things, but most of those aren't said whilst I'm in earshot, I have to say. Right, so what did we do over the last 2 weeks? Well, as we said in our previous episode, previously on Ian and Gary, we went to conferences. That was the plan. Now, we were supposed to go together to all of these, but yeah, obviously, I was on my own most of the time. But we'll start at the one at the beginning where we went to the emergency services show. Kerry, what was your take on that?
I do like the emergency services showing because there's always great kit and there's always new things coming out. It's nice to see what stuff's out on the ground. Um, One of the things which did come to mind, which I did notice, which is happening a lot out there, there are a lot of drones, a lot of suddenly more interesting drones and bits and pieces. And one of the things I did look at, which I think we need to leave for another episode, is we need to speak about drones and security. But also I looked at stuff like anti-drone devices and things like that, which I say we need to look at that on another episode because I've just written a blog about that, which I think is very interesting. We do need to discuss that and get someone in as well to talk about that.
Okay, well, we can certainly do that. Yeah, well, saying anything else? Because the rest of it's obviously going to be all about what I did, because you weren't there.
Well, I was at the emergency services show. I didn't turn up to the SIA conference, as you know, because me and the SIA, we have our ups and downs, and sometimes I always wonder when a conference is not a conference. And as I say, I'm not saying any more than that because I know you'll moan at me. But yeah, so the emergency services show gets 5 stars out of 5 stars to be. It's always interesting. There's always great kit on the ground, and for anyone to go there is really interesting just to see what is new and what is out and about. For me, I came away with a lot of interesting information as always, and that was it for me.
Oh, right. Well, okay. I suppose now we move on to the to my views on the emergency services show and all the other shows that I went to on my own. But the great thing, first of all, I've got to say, there were 2 standout moments for me. I got schooled, by the way, and this was the first one. In the police theatre, at the emergency service show, Lord Bernard Hogan Howe, former chief of the Met Police, was talking about how do we rebuild trust in the police, etc., etc. And it's I, as ever, because I like to get my money's worth, I always try and ask a question. And my question was basically centered around how can we get the police, recruit people to join the police when essentially, in my opinion, they are let down by the criminal justice system in that they go out, they do the work, and then it's all passed over. I made the unfortunate mistake when I was asking the question of saying, yes, our organisation, Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group, supports the boys in blue. And Lord Bernard Hogan Howe was absolutely right, although it really did sort of, you know, because you're trying to ask a question, but it did to say and to point out and say, Ian, I must stop you there. He does actually talk like this. He says, I must stop you there. We have women in the police force these days. It's not just the boys in blue. And he was spot on. And the reason I took that on board more than anything, because it's about narrative. And what we here at Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group are trying to do is we are trying to change the narrative. We don't want people to be called bouncers, door supervisors, etc. We want them to be called guest safety officers because it is more reflective of what we do, yeah, and what guest safety officers do in the modern society. And so much as it was sort of frustrating to be pulled up on that, it was absolutely correct that I was, because I was lazy, the same as other people are lazy. They take, I took, it was just easier for me to say the boys in blue, because it's a phrase that's been passed down over the generations, just as it's easy for people to say bouncer, just as it's easy for people to say door supervisor. I was wrong, and I'm really grateful to him for pointing that out. So, yeah, the answer to the question, by the way, is I didn't agree with him, because he turned around and says, oh, yeah, well, we're a lot more people up nowadays, Ian. There's more people in jail. We prosecute more. It's just we can't be doing a bad job. I could have a big chat with him about that, but that, again, is another topic. The other fantastic one that I went to listen to was about women in policing, and I think it was, there were two fantastic speakers, and I was absolutely amazed to hear this. Did you know that one of the leads was Manjit? She's a chief superintendent, and she told the audience that how people report burglaries, or how people report crime. And when the message is passed out to the officers on the ground, they'll say, go and investigate a burglary, go and investigate a murder, go and investigate arson. But when it comes to violence against women or domestic violence, then the call goes out, there's been an alleged incident of violence, of domestic violence. There has been an alleged sexual assault. That is the first thing that the officers on the ground are hearing. And that I found to be really disconcerting, because it automatically, as she quite rightly pointed out, puts the colors the perception of what's actually occurred. Yeah, it's a crime. That is what the officer is going out there to deal with. And I think that is something that's important here in what we do in our space, Gary, and that we need to be making sure that when we talk about crime, about violence, etc., we don't discount, dismiss, or diminish in any way, shape, or form part of that narrative about violence against women and girls. What's your view?
Well, everything is all alleged before it's been proven, isn't it? So if they're going to see a murder, it's an alleged murder, because it's not actually, they don't know if it's been a murder until it's been proven. So I see what you're coming through, but as I say, everything is alleged before it's proven.
Yeah, but it's about the mindset with which you approach something. If you are approaching a murder or a burglary or some other crime, then it's just that. It's just said, go and investigate this, go and have a look at, check this out. It's not the words of everybody knows in terms of the legal aspects that it's alleged and that it has to be proven in a court of law. But if you start the ball rolling with, oh, yeah, you know, it's an alleged crime. So, and just put it back to yourself, Gary, you know, your TBI, you were, you know, and the things that were led up to that. You know, what joy have you had from the police so far?
Well, none at all, isn't it? It's gone nowhere. They haven't done anything with it. And for the first person we caught, they failed to turn up with any evidence. They failed to get the witnesses in until they sent the information out to the wrong addresses. So no one turned up for the first court hearing with the first person we managed to get.
Yeah.
And so he got thrown out of court. And then the second person who actually done the crime, he's never been caught. He's still out there thinking it's okay to go around and hit guest safety officers in the face and it's fine. And he's got away with it once and he will do it again now and again, because that's the narrative which is now being put out.
And that's what I mean. But it wasn't an alleged.
No,
it wasn't an alleged assault. It was an actual assault, and that's what I'm saying. So if we're starting and we don't get a result when we actually say what it is, then how do you do it when you're all saying, well, you know, we'll get into that. It's just it's not much, Gary. But the thing that I took away from it was that it's all about the narrative, because if we want to stamp it out, we want to change the narrative, then we've got to play our part as well, haven't we?
Well, I agree with you, but I think for the guest safety officers on the ground, I mean, only going from my experience here and the people who work around me, everything which comes to us is never alleged. We take it as factual straight away. I.e., if someone comes to us and say they've been spiked, we've got protocols in place because automatically we're assuming. Where it's not, when policy comes in place, we've now got a process for it, and we're treating that as a spiking. A person, male, female, or transgender, if they're coming in and say they've been sexually assaulted, again, protocols come into play. We don't take it as an alleged. We start putting the protocols and policy in place to deal with those situations straight away. So for us, or our side, is nothing is alleged. We've got situations to go down and policies which we take up straight away. Again, I've had my phone stolen. Okay, we go down those policies. We have to believe what is the case, even though some of the times iPhones were not stolen because someone who's got drunk and they've left their phone on the side, and it's probably been picked up by a friend, or it ends up in their welfare or lost property department. Again, if someone has been sexually assaulted, we go down those policies. We've got things in play. We've got people they speak to. They take it away, and then everything is assumed. It has happened, you know, until either we found the person, we don't find the person. But we have to take it on as it has happened, rather than, you know, when you're talking about a police officer, if the wording is an alleged, and they go, you're right, they're being forced out there, or they're being not forced, but they're sent out to do their job, and they've already gone, oh well, it's only alleged, and that's the attitude, isn't it? It's only alleged, you know.
Yeah, okay. And you know, I know we acted, but I was just sort of bringing that point because it just struck me as being that it was the way that the way, according to, you know, the chief superintendent, is the way that it's reported and to the officers in the beginning, from the get-go. But anyway, so. Interesting. Hannah, there was a lovely lady there for Hannah, who turns out to be our mate Sarah Walker's boss, who's, as you know, is on the show, to give us her latest update on what she's been doing with violence against women and girls. She's what we're seeing her on Monday, I think it is. I think she's on board. Right. So yeah, sorry, I'm talking the most, but you know, Gary wasn't there. So the bottom line is, I then went to the SIA conference. That was interesting, really, really worthwhile going. I met a lot of good people there that I haven't seen for a while, and I had some good stuff. My only caveat to that is that it was sanitized, choreographed affair. In there was very little. In fact, I think there were only about 3 questions that were actually asked by members of the audience or the attendees, of which obviously I was one. But that sort of took the shine off it for me, because it was about finding out. But I do and must reiterate, I felt so sorry for the SIA and the current situation. And here's why. The government, and this was part of the question that I asked, aren't supporting business licensing. They are not supporting it. And without business licensing, we have 760, 70 odd businesses that have actually signed up, and you've got 6,000 or so that aren't. You know, how are the SIA supposed to be able to monitor that? The other side of it, so that's on the one side, how do you deal with the bosses? On the other side, we go back to my, which is my bugbear, training. And which is where this is where the biggest danger to the whole of the security industry, whether you're doing, you know, security officer training or you're doing guest safety officer training, that is all about where it goes wrong, Gary, in my book, because these training providers are circumnavigating the system, and every time they cheat, every time they get a single candidate through who hasn't done the course properly, then we're all put at risk. And that is where the real danger is for me. And it was, I mean, I don't know if you know the latest one, guys, about what they're doing is they'll offer training on a WhatsApp. Yeah. And what you have to do then is if you want to go for this training, you'll answer this WhatsApp message, and you'll say, oh, yes, I want to do the course. You will then be asked for all your details that you have to send through before you'll get told where the course is. So, A, you're an idiot for doing it because you're giving all of these details that could be used to defraud your ID. Secondly, you're going to be told on the day where you're told where these courses are supposed to take place. And what's actually happening, certain training providers are putting on a couple of courses. Yeah. So the SIA haven't got the resources to know where each of these, to be able to visit each of these. So what's happening is they wait. If nobody turns up, everybody gets put through that course. They do the videos and the bits and pieces, you know, they do the show. You do have to spend some time there, but it's known. And then they just move it. And then they turn around and say, oh, yeah, it was cancelled. Oh, we had to move. Oh, we had to do so-and-so. We had to do such and such. And it doesn't happen. The training providers are doing this. The awarding organisations know this is happening. The SIA can't do anything about it, because if they withdraw an awarding organisation's license to deliver their programme, then what you will find, and is intimated, is that the whole of the 6 awarding organisations, they'll stop. They'll withdraw. They will withdraw their labour. Essentially, they'll say, fine, if you're taking it off one, you're taking it off all of us, which would mean nobody could be certified, which would mean, a disaster as far as in terms of in terms of what the legal situation is supposed to be? How would venues open?
Well, venues could open because there's enough security. There's 400,000 security officers out on the ground, apparently.
Well, we both know.
But yeah, no, I see your point, and the point is really, as we go back to early days when we spoke about this, Ian, how can you be a security officer within 5 days? How can you do all this stuff in 5 days? It doesn't work out correctly. It never has. And you cannot be a soldier in 5 days. You cannot be a police officer in 5 days. You cannot be a paramedic in 5 days. You cannot be a nurse in 5 days. And you cannot be a doctor within 5 days. But with the security industry, with the Department of Working Pensions throwing people through, you could be a security officer with very little English, misunderstanding of the culture, not really understanding the full about English law and licensing. And within 5 days, you've done the course, you've gone through the checks, and hey presto, you've got a magic badge. And that's if you do the course.
That is, that is if you do the course. My only other caveat to that, Gary, is very straightforward. The SIA is completely correct when they turn around and say it is up to the companies that employ them to then provide further training. It is up to the individual to seek out further training. That is their job. It's their responsibility, but they know it's not going to happen. And one of the interesting things, is they said, is the SIA have recognised the disconnect between those that work for the big security guarding companies and those who work in the guest safety social economy arena, in that you may be working for 3 or 4 different employers over the course of a week. So who is responsible for your training, and how is that monitored, collated and audited?
You see, what annoys me about this here is, being a trainer myself, I have to go, and every year I have to go and get reassessed on my PI training for CP and or supervisors. Now I've got to do that. If I don't do that, I'm not allowed to teach. So why can't all these security officers, guest safety officers, every year have to go and be reassessed? Why not? Why can't that be done? Well, you're saying it's down to the individual. It's down to the individual of the company. Yes, it is down to the individual. For me, as an individual, I have to do that. But it's very easy to turn around. They've already put it in play that for me to teach, I have to do that. Now, as a security officer, to keep your badge in play, it's down to you as the individual to sort yourself out. And it should be down for the companies. Yes, companies can do it and say, yeah, so okay, we've got so many people and we put them all through block training and we get it done. When I have my own company and Vanessa's company, that gets regularly done regardless. I think every few months that we used to do officer safety training and go for the PI training, first aid and what have you. But at the end of the day, if you're paying for your badge and you want to be in security, it is your responsibility to look after your training. And that makes a better security officer. If you're trying to throw it back on the companies, yeah, it's all very well, companies should do it, and I think it is important. But if you've gone out your way to get that badge, because at the end of the day, whether the Department of Working Pensions have paid for it or you've gone out on your own, you've gone out on your own to get your badge, it's your responsibility. The companies don't pay for your badge when you renew it. You pay for your badge.
No, and that's wrong. I think that's completely. I think that's completely wrong. The whole lot of it. And I get it, Gary. Yeah, I run a company. I know exactly what you're talking about. I run a thing. In other companies, it is. In every other company, it is your responsibility as a person in running a company to make sure that your staff are properly and adequately trained. And if you can't guarantee that in terms of your due diligence, then you shouldn't be employing them. But the reality is what everybody's doing, all of them out there, especially in the guest safety world, is we need bodies in order to man an event. And therefore, we want to hide And that's how I see it. We want to hide behind the SIA license. The SIA turned around and said, we've given you a license to practice to an individual. The individual is sent out there, as you and I both know, most of them haven't got a clue what their legal responsibilities towards their own training is. All that the hospitality operators and social economy is, have they got a body who they can turn around and put on a position and say, oh, well, you know, he was SIA trained. Well, he works for someone else 4 days a week. Why should I pay for his training? Why should I pay for his badge? And I get and accept all of that, but we have to. So what is the answer? And that for me is we ought to have our own awarding organisation.
I agree with you. We should have our own award organisation. But another thing is, if people are responsible for their own training to go out there and do it, it will then start moving people out who are. I saw. Hang on, just to read it. I saw someone this other day. I think it was on a post on LinkedIn, and it was a well-known body bank company putting this up, and it was about this person going, "Why do security as a side hustle?" And that's the thing that got me, as a side hustle. There's a lot of professionals out there. I don't do this job as a side hustle. You know, they're a personal trainer. They do it as a side hustle. And the thing about it, if they're responsible for their own training and for their own work, then we won't be a side hustle. We won't be seen as a side hustle. You then got to make the effort to make sure every day, every week, your ticket's in date, or every year, sorry, your ticket's in date. You're regularly up to date on all your bits and pieces. Your CPD is up to date, and you've gone out your way to do it. And it's all very well saying to companies, but if we had our own awarding organisation, again, you go back to your organisation every year and you go and do your upskilling, or you go and do your refresher training. And if you put it onus on the individual, we would lose a lot of these jackets who are only in this industry for a side hustle.
Yeah, but then you would also, and I understand why. I fully understand why a company wouldn't, especially in our sector, yeah, in the social economy. There is absolutely no way that I want to be training people, paying for their things so they can go and work for someone else. Why should I? Well, absolutely. Why should I do that? And that's what I mean. I totally agree. But what we're saying is that if that's missing, and understandably missing, then it is the responsibility of the organisations that, as far as I'm concerned, you know, for operators, for guest safety officer providers to come together and put and create their own awarding body, so that we're not at the behest of, you know, the ones that are out there that are literally in it in order to comply and to get their share of the 1.3 million pounds or so turnover that it generates through licensing alone. That's it.
I agree with you, but you know, as I say, the regulator can put pressure on the trainers, i.e., people like ourselves. You've been a trainer once, and we have to go and refresh every year. They can put it in legislation that every officer could do, and they could do that. And then you've got the ball game.
They unfortunately, and that's the point I was making right at the beginning, Gary, they can't. And that is exactly the problem. The SIA cannot have, they do not have that power. All of that power resides with OFQUAL, who are as much use as a chocolate fireguard. They are an absolute disgrace. And as far as you spoke, you can't be a what do you call it? A nurse after 5 minutes. You're absolutely right, but you can be, according to them. You know, an off-qual question should be like, you should be able to say, "Oh, I saw it in a cartoon once. I saw Wily Coyote run off a cliff and land, and he was safe. And if I do that now, off-qual will give me a certificate to say that I'm qualified to do that." That is where we're at. It's wrong. Wily Coyote time. That is what OFQUAL is. Waste of space. But anyway, because
let's move on, Ian, because we're running out of time now.
So we are indeed. The final, as you say, getting ranty.
I'm talking over you. I'll fight you. I'll fight you, Ian. I'll fight you. I
That's it.
want to hear about international security
It
expedition.
was it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed it. There were a couple of really standout moments for me. I spent most of my time at the in the Risk and Resilience Theatre, and I got to hear some fantastic ideas, thoughts. All of them spoke about the need to create safer spaces, yeah, and to make sure that the public also played, and the need for the public to also play their part. But that all requires education. And there was a wonderful couple of people, a lady that I know and have worked with briefly, Professor Alison Wakefield. She gave some great insight. She was on a panel with another guy called Professor Washington Otien, and what he spoke about, the project that he's doing about community engagement, all of which would help us on the ground. It's all about creating safer spaces. That was really, really good. Honestly, really enjoyed that. I saw our mate Lisa Bascott and Satya Ray, who's coming on the show, and I got to meet Lady Jane Cork. Lady Sarah Jane Cork, do apologize. That was fantastic. Who else was around? Oh, Brian Sims, fantastic chat with him. Brian, as you know, writes or edits the magazine Security Matters. And we had a very, very interesting chat about the need for the industry as a whole to speak up for itself, and not to, to be more front facing. That was quite interesting discussion. But the best one, and I'm going to wind up on this, is that we had a victim on the final part of the first day. There was a panel of victims facing terror, victims of terror, and it was just staggering, mate. Honestly, really was. You got 4 panelists. A guy called Travis Vrain, then he got blown up, or knocked over by the bridge on the London Bridge attack. Seriously injured. No help and support. You've got Fegan Murray, lost the son. Very tragic. Again, virtually no help and support. And you've got, two lovely ladies from Northern Ireland who spoke about their particular experiences, and some of which, because I've been in the army, in the 70s and in Northern Ireland and in the area where they were from, really resonated. But what struck me right from the get-go was the lack of support that they received. Travis, for instance, was told to get, when he said, "I can't sleep," he says, "Open the window and I'll drink a milk." Yeah, as I said, you couldn't write it. And all of them said that. And the other thing was all about the importance of education and creating safer spaces. And that's what we guest safety officers, we do. We create civilized spaces. And within that, there is the opportunity, not only to learn, but for businesses that are smart, to see it as an investment rather than a cost. But yeah, it was cool, really was. That's it.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you. That was good stuff.
It was. So yeah, any questions, Gary?
Not at all, Ian. Not at all. Not at all. But on those final notes, who have we got next week coming on?
Well, we've got we've got, who is it? Oh yeah, as I said, we've got Sarah Walker, and from Safer Business Network. I've got to link up with, catch up with Anne-Marie Shibib and see where we are with her, because she said that we would she would come on the show soon. A show that obviously, had you not had your TBI incident, she would have already recorded. We've got a couple of other people that I'm lining up, but we'll have to see. Won't be long.
Great stuff.
It will be great stuff. Wasn't it your mate, Doug Melia? I wanted to have a chat with him, and also Jim Dwyer. Jim Dwyer's there. We've got to get him back on as well. Good man. All right. That's about it from me. Anything else, peeps?
Not at all. Not at
I
all.
like the, did you see what Gary did? He put a little thumbs up. He's been playing with his reactions. Yeah, I know. It's fun, isn't it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, from Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group 32, it's time to say goodbye. Peace out.